Hello and welcome to the Unnamed Sports Show. I am your host, Joshua Griffith, here on the Sports Talkline Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. Excited for today on the show, as I'm going to be breaking down the first half of the NBA season, looking at MVP candidates, Defensive Player of the Year candidates, Rookie of the Year candidates, and what teams are dominating in both conferences. Also excited as I am joined by Luca De Angelis, who is going to be hopefully a regular contributor for Sports Talkline in the future. And we are going to break down everything, like I said. So, going to do my housekeeping before we get into chatting about the NBA. Make sure to like the video down at the bottom. If you don't already, subscribe to the Sports Talkline YouTube channel and comment in the video. Let us know who you think is MVP. Let us know your opinions on the topics that we're talking about today. So, if you haven't already noticed, I'm already joined by my guest, Luca. So, Luca, thank you very much for joining me. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me, Josh. It's awesome to make this happen. We've been discussing it back and forth, trying to find a time over the past couple of weeks. Really, really excited to just talk about all those things basketball that you rattled off before.
I know you guys are doing a little bit better than we are here in North America, in Australia, where you are, but are you guys staying safe and healthy and everything right now?
So we've actually had no COVID cases countrywide for the last 6 days. We had a pretty rough time last year, especially in my city in Melbourne. By rough, I mean probably not the peak cases that America or Canada have had, but we were locked down in our house for 4 months. We've got COVID safe restrictions going on now, but things are fairly normal. But we're always alert. Like, we revert back to like restrictions if cases rise again. But no, life's been relatively normal, which I'm thankful for.
Well, that's good to hear. And always like to make sure to get that out of the way with my guests to see how they're doing. But everyone, I know that you want to get into some NBA talk. So unofficially, the first half kind of ends this weekend. We have the All-Star game. Luca, what are your initial thoughts of the first half of the NBA season?
I mean, I know it's because we've got a truncated season this year, but it feels like it's gone too quickly. Because we had like a Christmas Day start this year, around Christmas Day kind of thing. All-Star breaks usually same time, but in February. So it feels all smushed and compressed, but it's been exciting. There's probably more parity. I mean, last year had quite a bit of parity. This year's taken it to another level. You can't pick who's going to win, especially in the Eastern Conference. I think between the 4th seed and like the 10th seed, there's like 1.5 game difference. Like, it's crazy. Lots of good storylines so far this season too.
Yes, I mean, the Eastern Conference is very packed this year. At the top, obviously, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons have been dominating things for the Philadelphia 76ers. They're at the top with, a 24-12 record. Just behind them, the Brooklyn Nets, 24-13. But then after, the Bucks sitting there at 21-14, that's when things get really jumbled up. 2 days ago, the Toronto Raptors were sitting at 4th in the Eastern Conference, and today they sit at 8th in the Eastern Conference. What do you make of the East? Like, what do you just see the powerhouses like Philly, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee, maybe even Boston? I'll throw them in the mix in that conversation. Do you think that's it for the East, or do you think we're going to get any maybe surprises?
So I think that Brooklyn are going to run away with the East. The only thing that I think is going to stop Brooklyn is their big weakness roster-wise is defensively at center, because DeAndre Jordan is a ghost of his former self at the moment. So I can see a Philadelphia, maybe a Milwaukee knocking them off because Embiid and Giannis play that big man position, which coincidentally fits in with Brooklyn's weakness. But you've got to remember, Brooklyn have been winning games left, right, and center without Kevan Durant, who was arguably their best player before he went down, and they haven't skipped a beat, which is terrifying. So at the top, I think Brooklyn are going to be the team to beat. But in terms of the remaining I'd say remaining 5 playoff spots and the 2 playing spots. I mean, it's up to anyone. Like Washington recently hit some nice form before dropping their last couple of games. Chicago have been playing good basketball. New York have actually been playing surprisingly well.
Yeah.
And then you got Charlotte with the Rookie of the Year favourite, Lamelo Ball. I honestly can't pick how the rest of the East is going to go. If I was going to put money on it, I'd say Boston and Toronto would fill out those next 2 spots, just because I know those teams are good. It's just that they've both had 2 of the toughest runs with COVID out of any team. Toronto have still losing a bunch of players. Today they had a skeleton crew playing out there. I know that Boston missed Tatum for almost a month. Brown's missed games. And once Brad Stevens realises that it's not a good idea to play 2 centres at once, I think, like in a starting lineup, I think Boston will play to their potential. But aside from Boston and Toronto, I think the other 3 teams, you might as well flip a series of coins.
Well, look, I mean, you touched on so many things that I want to get to. We'll get to LaMelo Ball and Rookie of the Year with Charlotte Hornets. But one of the things with the Nets, you're talking about them. Do they have enough depth, do you think? Because, we're seeing KD throw up huge numbers. We're seeing James Harden, leading the league with 11 assists a game. We're seeing Kyrie Irving having a great bounce back season. But do you think they're going to have enough when it comes to postseason time besides those 3?
So they remind me a bit of a more star-studded version of last year's Lakers team. They've got a surprising amount of depth. Joe Harris, I think he leads the league in 3-point percentage for people over a certain amount of attempts. He's like shooting him at like 51%. Check out what Bruce Brown's been doing since he's been starting as well. Like he was kind of an afterthought. He came from, I don't know how he got to Brooklyn, but I know he was on Detroit's roster last year. He's been putting up some really strong numbers, and once KD's back, he'll probably be bumped to the bench and he'll become a depth piece. They've got a talented young centre who should be starting, Nicholas Claxton, only 21 years old, who's been putting up some really impressive numbers when given the run. So, look, they're not the deepest team that's going to be in the postseason, but I think that their depth is not as bad as you'd expect.
Okay. Well, let's get to the Toronto Raptors because, like I mentioned, 4th in the East a couple of days ago, and a little bit of COVID protocols. Pascal Siakam was forced to miss the game. Fred VanVleet was forced to miss the game. Half the coaching staff was missed the game. But, they're right in the thick of things. Are the Toronto Raptors going to be making a run in the 2021 season, or do you think that Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster, and management are going to look to trade Kyle Lowry, as we've heard some rumors that he might be traded to the 76ers to bolster their roster? What's Toronto going to do this year, Luca?
Toronto is a tough one to pick. Last year I was convinced that they were going to come out of the East. I was almost proven right.
I was too. But my preseason was okay. Watch for Toronto to come back because of just Nick Nurse, Kyle Lowry, for the people that I mentioned. Pascal Siakam's advancing as a superstar in this league, and just everything. But sorry to cut you off.
No. I'm glad that you agree. I feel less crazy now. But last year they fell just short. But they're a stingy defensive team. I think they're not quite as good at defense this year, but they're still up there with defensive rating. I think the big thing that they're missing from last year is that even though he didn't offer much in offense, Marc Gasol was sneakily close to a defensive player of the year level player on defense last year. This year, I mean, Chris Boucher? How do you pronounce it? Chris Boucher? Like Boucher?
Boucher, yes. Chris Boucher, okay. Yes.
I had a feeling it wasn't going to be a conventional pronunciation.
The French-Canadian phenom.
I thought so, yeah. I thought it would be weird, yeah. So Chris Boucher, really talented player, but he doesn't have that big body to match up against bigger centres. And unfortunately, my countryman Aron Baynes hasn't played the same level as he did last year in Phoenix.
You brought Aron Baynes up, and I wasn't going to bring him up. I actually literally don't bring up Aron Baynes at all in this conversation. but since you brought him up,
Yeah, he's not been good. And so if they were going to make a trade, look, it's hard to move from Kyle Lowry. He's probably the greatest Raptor of all time. Just when you factor in how long he's been there, what he's given to the club. But if you could get a good defensive center in his stead, it'd be hard. It'd be hard not to do the move. I don't know if Philadelphia are the right trade partner. I think for Philly to get Lowry, there'd probably need to be a 3-team trade. But yeah, I could definitely see that because Fred VanVleet can play on the ball and play point guard. You can shift Powell into the starting lineup and just have that big body to throw at gifted offensive big men.
Okay, well, let's talk about a big man who doesn't have a team right now, Demarcus Cousins. Where do you think would be the best fit for him?
My biased self would always say Lakers.
But I would say, and my biased self would say Raptors. So
yeah, but having said that, we as in the Lakers started Damian Jones today for the second game in a row because Gasol's out, I think because of COVID protocols. I wrote an article for Lake Show Life about how the Lakers were struggling with big men because Gasol's at the age where he can't take the load on by himself anymore. I don't know how much Boogie has in the tank, especially defensively, but he knows the Lakers locker room. He knows the staff. I think that would be a great fit for him. I do think the Raptors are another really good spot for him. See, I'd say Boston because they wanted a proper center, but the thing is they've got three. Like I think that there'd be a bit of internal conflict if they took away from Robert Williams' development in minutes. I know fans wanted Miles. I only bring up the Celtics because I know that the fan base was screaming for Miles Turner in the offseason as a center. But
he's doing some nice things for Indiana right now.
He is. When you talk about Defensive Player of the Year, I'm definitely going to mention his name. But yeah, I do think that the Raptors and the Lakers coincidentally are probably two of the front runners from a pure roster construction standpoint.
Okay, well, we're talking about the Lakers. Let's move over to the Western Conference as I'm joined by Luca De Angelis here on the Unnamed Sports Show. Utah Jazz, year after year, they have fantastic regular seasons. They're leading the West right now, 27-9, followed by obviously, the surprising Phoenix Suns. We see that one. And then the two teams from LA with the Lakers and the Clippers. Bit of a drop off after that, but do you think that Utah is going to finally take their regular season success and make it postseason results?
No, I don't. Just to be blunt, they remind me of a lot of those like really strong regular season teams who build a really good record based on like cohesiveness and great offensive sets. Quinn Snyder's underrated in that department, but I get Donovan Mitchell is a better individual player than anyone on this team that I'm about to reference, but I get a lot of those like 60-win Atlanta Hawks vibes from them. Team that had
the Mike Budenholzer teams.
Yeah, the Mike Budenholzer teams that had like Horford, Paul Millsap, Kyle Korver. I just get that vibe from them unless Mitchell can take that next step in his offensive game, because they've got the defense to be a contender. Gobert is Gobert, multiple Defensive Player of the Year winner. They've got guys like Royce O'Neal who are just quietly really good defenders. Mike Conley has always been one of the best defensive guards since he's been in the league. But for them to take that next step, you need that transcendent offensive player. It's been a long time since the team's won without one of those. Off the top of my head, it would probably be that Spurs team that won when Kawhi was early in his before Kawhi became Kawhi.
The Ginobili, the Tony Parker,
that's right, and
the big Spurs.
Yeah, when Tim Duncan was on the downswing of his career, it just hasn't happened since then. So. Yeah, unless their defense was so suffocating that it didn't matter. I find it tough to see them come out of the West.
But it's curious this year because they do sit third in points per game, right? So it's not like they're not getting offense, but I mean, I definitely see what you're talking about how Donovan Mitchell needs to step up and be that elite, kind of scorer, because teams need that. You need that when it comes to the playoffs. You need that killer instinct person. I mean, you can go back to the Raptors games against the 76ers and in game 7 when the Raptors won the championship, and Kawhi Leonard shot like 2 of 11 in the game before he hit the greatest shot in Raptors history. So, it's not necessarily about the points production that you're putting up in a regular season. It's just about if you have that killer instinct. And I don't know if there's anyone on Utah that does.
That's right. I mean, what I saw from Donovan Mitchell in that legendary series against Denver last year, he showed that he could be that guy. Him and Jamal Murray's duel was something spectacular to behold. But I mean, the reason Denver almost ended up making it all the way to the finals last year was because Jokic and Murray were both playing at superstar levels on offense. They had two guys who weren't superstars in the regular season. Jokic started playing like one towards the end, but he took a while to warm up. But you had two guys who basically flipped a switch in the playoffs, and they took like the Lakers. I mean, it didn't go that long, the series, but you got to remember Anthony Davis had to hit a game winner to get him past like game 2. Like if Mitchell can play like he did in that series, and the rest of the role players can continue their current level of play, like Jordan Clarkson's probably going to win 6th Man of the Year. Like if he can keep that same energy, then maybe I'm wrong about the Jazz.
Okay, well, a team that wanted to bolster their bench and their roster by bringing in 2 former 6th Men of the Year, the team that you are a big fan of and cover and write on, the Los Angeles Lakers. A little bit of a tough slide in the last 2 games, but they have been looking pretty good even without Anthony Davis in the last couple of games. They were my pick to start the season to go back-to-back, win championships. I am going to maintain that the whole season is really irrelevant for them as long as they make the playoffs, and I don't even really think it matters to them if they're in the top 4 seeds. They've had a better record on the road. Let's talk about the Lakers.
Firstly, yes, I'm a little biased, but I also predicted back-to-back this year. I looked at the team, and as you mentioned, the 2 leading 6th Men of the Year pollers from last year, bolstering a lineup that was already really strong with 2 top 5 players. I mean, some people debate that Davis isn't, but let's say 1 definite top 5 player and 1 borderline top 5 player.
He's on 5. I'll give him 5.
Yeah, like it's not ridiculous to say it. I thought that we'd be the hot favourites this year. Unfortunately, Davis's injury, we've struggled since he's been out. We've dropped some close games. We got blown out by the Jazz and a few other teams. I think the Nuggets blew us out too without him. It's a big load for LeBron to take on his own. And so I don't think we're going to finish as the 1st seed with Davis out for the foreseeable future. I don't think we're going to finish as the 2nd seed. But like you said, I don't think it matters that much where we are as long as we're in the playoffs. I don't think we'll slide all the way out of the playoffs. And with all teams being healthy and no COVID outs or anything, I still think the Lakers are the best team in the West until I see the team struggle full strength. Or, if say a Los Angeles Clippers ends up catching fire and looking unbeatable, I still think that if everyone comes back healthy, the Lakers are the team to beat. But having said that, this recent stretch has exposed our biggest weaknesses. We struggle with defensive wing depth. I wrote a lengthy article on that, and we struggle with backup bigs and now starting bigs with Gasol out. Damian Jones is, I guess, a bit of a panic signing. He's young and he could come good, but he definitely wouldn't have been at the top of the team's priority list this season. But, the injuries have forced our hand. So...
Yeah, I don't mind. I didn't mind Marquise Morris starting as a big for the Lakers, as we're kind of moving into the almost a small ball version of NBA, unless you're big and can shoot a three as well. But yeah, you can definitely see some of the glaring deficiencies as the Lakers have when they're missing some of their players. One of the guys that I really like for the Lakers is Trenton Horton-Tucker, THT. Producer's going to know all about this. I'm sure he'll have tons of THT clips that he can run while I'm talking about this. That's why I'm going to say THT several times so we can throw up 3 or 4 of THT's clips. But I like what he's doing, and I like a couple other pieces. But I think that one of the things that really showed for them was Dennis Schroder's injury when he was out, because they seem to struggle more with him out than with Anthony Davis.
Yeah, no, that's a very good observation. And yeah, I'd agree with that. I think when I wrote my grading off-season moves article, my favorite signing was a Schroder signing, not because I thought he was the best player, although I did, but it was more because he let LeBron go off the ball more. Schroder was the only other let me restart that. Rondo was the only other player last season that could handle the ball aside from LeBron. And until the playoffs, Rondo was very offensively challenged. So you'd see these big dips in our plus minus when LeBron was on the bench, not because the other players sucked, but because LeBron was the only offensive threat that could handle the ball. So adding Schroder in place of Rondo this year, I was like, okay, we've got someone who can handle the ball a bit, is a underrated passer, and he can let LeBron rest off the ball, which means that LeBron can pick his spots, be more effective, and rest his 36-year-old body. And yeah, LeBron's load was immense when Schroder was out, and it affected his defense, especially. And yeah, it showed in the results. We really missed his absence.
The Lakers are definitely one of the top defensive teams. I mean, being second in the league in defensive points against. And that little stretch of injuries did kind of hamper them, I think, stress their workload. Because one of the things that I really loved about the Lakers was you'd watch them and be playing teams and be first, second quarter and be 55-35 for the Lakers. And it's like, okay, well, Anthony Davis and LeBron are going to the bench for the rest of the game, and we'll just play everybody else while they rest. And they've kind of been having to stress the minutes a bit now. But with the stressing of the minutes, we're seeing LeBron James throw up a fantastic season that, maybe is garnishing MVP talks. We have, a lot of different people in that with Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, James Harden. You could throw in the MVP talks. Luca, who do you think is going to be the MVP, and who's your MVP at the halfway mark of the year?
All right. So if you'd asked me this question maybe 3 weeks ago, I would have said LeBron. But seeing the team struggle without Davis, I think that's hurt his case. Mm-hmm. So it's MVP is always tough because it feels like the criteria changes very often. I know it's usually been best player on one of the best 2 teams in a conference. I think only one player's won it on a non-top 2 seed, which was Russell Westbrook in his triple-double year. So I'm going to give you 2 MVPs. I'm going to do one on who I think has been the actual most valuable player to his team. And then I'm going to tell you who I think's leading the race based on the traditional criteria. So Perfect. If we're saying who the best player, most valuable player has been, I think it's Nikola Jokic for the Denver Nuggets. He's put up a ridiculous year. He's taken his efficiency to another level. His passing is probably the best passing big man season in modern history. Even his defense has been improved. So I think he's been the best player in the NBA. But if we're talking about the usual NBA criteria, which is best player on a top 2 seed, I'd say Joel Embiid is leading the race. Embiid's a bit absurd. I think he's averaging close to 30 points per game.
29.8, yes.
Yep. He's actually in the top. So of all high volume mid-range jump shooters, he's actually ranked 5th in the NBA in mid-range percentage, which is pretty crazy for someone who's 7'1". Yeah, and he's playing great defense as well. So I think Embiid's leading it, but don't sleep on Giannis as well. People probably won't give it to him because they're voter fatigue. But the last month he's put up, he's probably been the best player in the league. And Milwaukee still aren't far off that top 2 seed that you need to really historically be in the MVP conversation. So I think those 3 guys I've mentioned are my top 3, and Harden's probably right outside that. He's probably hurt a bit by his slow start when he was with Houston, but I think over the last month, him and Giannis have been the 2 best players in the league. So he's definitely going to be in that conversation too.
I want to throw out a dark horse for MVP. This is my dark horse, Steph Curry for the Golden State Warriors. He's throwing up 29.5 points a game right now. He's leading the Warriors. They, fell a little bit because the East is pretty congested as well as the West is pretty congested as well as the East. And they fell a little bit behind, but I think that the Golden State Warriors are going to finish probably top 4 in the West when things are said and done. And I think that he might get a little bit of consideration, but like you said, yes, it falls down to the regular NBA criteria.
Yeah. Sorry, continue.
No. Yeah. I was just going to say, yeah, but want to move on to Rookie of the Year. And well, this isn't really a conversation because we probably both know who the halfway point early Rookie of the season is. But I definitely want to talk about it because the rookies in the 2021 class have been really exciting to watch.
So, yeah, I've actually got an interesting viewpoint as well because, so just to get it out of the way, Lamelo Ball's the guy we're both thinking of.
Yeah.
For the viewers that aren't aware, he actually played, instead of playing in college, he actually played down here in Australia. So I actually had the privilege of watching him in person a few times, multiple times. And I was actually really low on him because when he played here, first of all, he was on the worst team in the competition. He played very, very bad defense. His shot selection was bad. He did show a lot of flashes as a passer. I did think that he'd come into the NBA right away as a high-level passer and as a shot creator, but his shot looked really weird and broken, and his defense, it didn't look like he cared. So I thought that he was very overrated, and I was so confident in this viewpoint because I was like, guys, I've seen him in person. He's not as good as advertised. But I was so wrong because I don't know whether it's the freedom of American basketball compared to the Australian League. Don't know whether he just worked really, really hard on his shot and his mechanics. He even looks, I wouldn't say he's as good as his brother on defense or a superstar defender, but he's not as bad as defense as he showed down here either. Like, he's impressed me in every single facet of the game, and I was dead set wrong about him.
That's really cool. Yeah, I know he definitely didn't go with the traditional high school college route and kind of carved his own path, playing things in Australia and then moving to professional leagues and stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, he had 15 points a game, 6 assists, 6 rebounds. It's going to be hard for anyone to catch him. But some of the other rookies that have kind of been impressing this season, James Wiseman, obviously for the Golden State Warriors. We mentioned the Knicks earlier. Emmanuel Quickley has been part of that. Obi Toppin has looked good, not obviously putting up the numbers, but he be in the NBA slam dunk competition, which would be nice to see. Any other rookies that you've kind of been watching? Maybe Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton for the Kings.
That's what I was waiting for you to mention.
Yeah, he's been exciting to watch for the Kings. He's basically the only reason to watch a Kings game right now.
Yeah, and De'Aaron Fox. But Halliburton. So as wrong as I was about Lamelo, I was similarly right about Halliburton. He was one of my favorite guys going into the draft. This year, I took the liberty of trying to watch some highlight tapes of a lot of the top 20 prospects because I wanted to go into it with a more informed opinion than previous years. I wanted to do some of my own scouting rather than go off what the scouts said. And, it's had mixed results. But, yeah, Halliburton was one of the guys I hit on because he just looked – my comp for him when I scouted him was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. and his numbers compare favorably to a rookie SGA. He's an even better shooter. Like, he's a good shooter in college with a funky shooting motion. It's translated even better than I expected to the NBA. He should be starting in Sacramento, and it wouldn't surprise me when he gets healthy after the All-Star break, I think they should probably play more 3-guard lineups with Hield or move Hield to the bench. I think he'd be number 2 in my list. And I think number 3 is another guy you mentioned, Emmanuel Quickley. Always impressive whenever he gets minutes. Unfortunately, Tom Thibodeau hates rookies, but Quickley's talent shows every time he's on the court. And I think as soon as next year, he should be the starter in New York. I actually think he should be starting now, but I understand why Thibs, with his team in the playoffs for the first time in forever, why he'd want to go with a veteran. But I think from next year onwards, Quickley should definitely be starting. But yeah, those are my top 3 in order: Lamelo, Halliburton, Quickley. So all point guards. So
yeah, like I said, though, it's been an exciting 2021 draft class. I had a couple more topics that I wanted to get with you, but we are going pretty long already, which is fantastic, which means I will have to have you on again to talk more NBA. So
that's fine by me. I'm always happy to, if you have to talk more NBA with me, I mean, I'm not going to complain one bit.
Well, there we go. So everyone, I hope you were excited as we are for this weekend's NBA All-Star game. Might be a little bit different than this year, but the All-Star weekend's always fun, even if this year's is completely irrelevant. Shouldn't happen because we're in a COVID pandemic, but please enjoy it anyway because the NBA has to pay their sponsors. And I hope that everyone enjoyed this, and you guys will hopefully see more of him on the Sports Talk Line Network in the future here.
Thanks for having me. And no, that's all good. Yeah.
I'm kidding my name. I'm reading too many NBA names, and I told you this in the green room.
No, that's all right. Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, I can't wait to do some more stuff with Sports Talk Line and be on your show again.
Fantastic. So I have been your host, Joshua Griffith, here for the Unnamed Sports Show here on the Sports Talk Line Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365.